Hi everybody! In today's video, I'm going to discuss my dad's and my husband's Y-DNA haplogroup and why, even though they are considered black men, they don't have an African Y-DNA haplogroup. This is more common in the United States than you may think, so let's talk about it. After talking about the Y-DNA haplogroups, I will also include the research behind the 28 Scottish-Irish surnames listed as slave owners in the Missouri slave census in 1860 in one township in Callaway County. A viewer has some questions about whether those were Irish surnames, and I did comment and let him know that I would include more info about those surnames in today's video. So if you're interested in learning more about that, make sure you continue to watch the video all the way through the end. Okay, so let's talk about Y-DNA haplogroups. In case you're not familiar with what haplogroups are, here is a brief explanation. A haplotype refers either to the DNA sequence of one's mitochondrial DNA, which is inherited from one's mother, or to the DNA sequence of one's Y chromosome, which is passed from fathers to their sons. It is a way to determine where your maternal line or paternal line originated. Mitochondrial DNA traces your mother's line. Mothers pass their X chromosome to all their children. Fathers pass their Y chromosome to their male children. Since men have an X and a Y chromosome, they can test for their mitochondrial haplogroup as well as their Y-DNA haplogroup. Women receive an X chromosome from their dad, who would have inherited it from his mother, and an X chromosome from their mother. Women can only test for their mitochondrial haplogroup determined by the X chromosome they received from their mothers. Since I am a woman, to get my father's line, I needed my dad or brother with the same father to provide a sample. My dad already took an Ancestry DNA test. Ancestry DNA does not currently offer Y-DNA testing for haplogroups, but they do include the information in the raw data. You can download the raw data provided from Ancestry.com and then upload that data to another site to do analysis on the Y-DNA haplogroup. If you choose, you could also purchase a DNA testing kit from companies like Family Tree DNA, Living DNA, and 23andMe to test your Y-DNA haplogroup. Family Tree DNA currently has Y-DNA tests ranging from $109 through $399. The more money you pay, the more detailed the info will be. Most people are content with the info provided from the lowest cost test unless they are a geneticist and have more reasons for wanting extensive Y-DNA info besides for family research. Living DNA offers DNA testing kits from $79 through $149. Their higher end test includes health data, but you can get your haplogroup from their $79 test. 23andMe offers DNA kits from $99 through $199. Their $199 test will include the haplogroups and health data, but you can get the haplogroup from their $99 test. My mom just took the $99 23andMe test, and we should get the results back in a few weeks. My mom's report will include her mitochondrial haplogroup, which will also be my haplogroup because it's passed from mother to daughter. Since my dad already took the Ancestry DNA test and the raw data includes markers for the Y chromosome haplogroup, I decided to use the raw data to get my dad's paternal haplogroup. Even though I don't have a Y chromosome, my dad's haplogroup results shows where my paternal line descended. I uploaded my dad's raw data to MorleyDNA.com. I won't go through the steps in this video. However, if you are interested in knowing specifically how I downloaded the raw data from Ancestry and uploaded it to MorleyDNA.com to do the Y-DNA haplogroup analysis, then leave a comment and I will do a separate video. My dad's Y-DNA haplogroup is listed as most likely R1b1A2A1A2C, or also known as R1b-M529 or R1b-L459. R1b is listed as the most common Y chromosome haplogroups outside of Africa. The additional letters and numbers after the R1b pinpoint a more specific geography. R1b1A2A1A2C is also known as M529 or L459 or L21. This haplogroup has origins in Great Britain and Ireland. My dad's Ancestry DNA admixture results show he is 18% Scottish and 4% Irish. However, Scottish and Irish ancestry often overlap in these tests. I found a blog that discusses the Scots-Irish and how they are descendants of the indigenous Celts of the British Isles and Ireland. My dad's haplogroup is consistent with what we know about our ancestry and our autosomal results from Ancestry.com. Also, don't forget we have a history of redheads in our family, and modern genetics in Scotland and Ireland show those countries with the highest percentages of redheads. Approximately 35% of African American men have a European Y-DNA haplogroup. This means their father's line came from Europe and not Africa. Studies have also shown that the majority of African Americans have mitochondrial DNA that comes from Africa. This means their mother's line originated in Africa. Studies also have shown that most African Americans show genetic mixture from male ancestors. Here is what 23andMe specifically said about this. All three groups, African Americans, European Americans, and Latinos, showed asymmetrical male and female ancestry contributions, with more European male and more Native American and African female ancestors. This asymmetry is likely a legacy of slavery, unbalanced sex ratios in frontier settings, as well as other social factors. My dad's European Y-DNA haplogroup came through the result of slavery. However, my husband's Y-DNA haplogroup did not. Let's talk about that next. If you have watched our previous ancestry videos, you know my husband was surprised to find out his ancestry admixture shows he is 59% African and 41% European, with the majority of his European ancestry coming from the Eastern Europe, Russia area. He was always told his parents and grandparents were all black. However, we were suspicious of this based upon his dad's red hair and light skin. We believe my husband's grandfather was white, full Eastern European. My husband's father was born in 1952, so obviously this was after slavery. My husband's grandmother was only 14 though when she was pregnant with my husband's father. This raises questions about whether she really consented. We know there were consenting interracial relationships even back in the 1950s. However, it was not common as it was illegal and frowned upon by society. There were also non-consenting interracial relationships even after slavery. I recently came across the story of Ruby Mccullum, who was a married black woman in Florida. She was convicted in 1952 for killing a white state senator whom she said repeatedly raped her for years and forced her to bear his child. She was sentenced to death, but later was committed to the state mental hospital. Forced relationships were still happening in the 1950s. My husband's grandmother was also from Florida and gave birth to her first son in 1952 and her second son in 1957. Florida at the time was very segregated and had several Jim Crow laws limiting its black residents. Grandma Ruth never married, but she did go on and have a second child with the same man when she was about 19. She never talked about their real father. Both of her sons were born with red hair and light skin. We have confirmed that the sons indeed had the same father. My husband's first cousin took a 23andMe test. My husband took an Ancestry DNA test. We were able to compare their results by uploading their raw data into MyHeritage DNA. The results showed they share 1,048 cms, which is consistent with a first cousin. If they were only half first cousins, meaning if their dads were half brothers, then their cm range would be around 449 cms. I used the same method as I did for my dad to test my husband's Dna haplogroup. His haplogroup came back as R1A1A1B12B. Since Y-DNA remains the same for the paternal line, this means my husband's dad and his uncle have the same haplogroup as well. Haplogroup R1A1A1B1A2B is also known as R1A-CTS1211 or R1A-CTS3607. A sizable number of men in Poland share this haplogroup. This is very interesting to us because my husband did match to a distant cousin whose great-grandparents came to the United States from Poland. I'm currently working with her to see if we can determine who on her tree connects with my husband's family. Neither my husband nor my dad expected to find out their paternal lineage came from anywhere besides Africa. They grew up as black men. They have lived their entire lives as black men, and that's not going to change. However, being aware of your history and genealogy is empowering, and everyone has the right to know where they descended. As discussed at the beginning of this video, I am going to provide more details about the 28 Scottish and Irish surnames I discussed in a previous video. Before doing that though, let me say this in case you don't have time to watch the video to the end. Human beings are complicated, and so is some of our history. For example, I have seen the comments about the Irish being slaves themselves and therefore couldn't possibly be slave owners. I'm aware of the struggle the Irish had resisting the English and how some Irish were sent as prisoners and were made to work as indentured servants. However, that reality does not change the fact that they were also slave owners in the United States. There were no white slaves in the United States in the 1800s when the names I'm getting ready to read were listed on the slave census as slave owners. Both realities can exist because human beings are complicated. Suffering a horrible wrong does not necessarily prevent an individual or a group from then inflicting harm on others. Someone who is a hero to one person could possibly be a nightmare to another. The purpose of understanding this history isn't to point fingers at any group of people or to declare one so-called race of people as being better than another. However, it can be used as an opportunity to understand what we all as human beings are capable of if we don't know our history and we don't work on ourselves to prevent the bad things that happened in that history. These were the men with Scottish and Irish names who were listed as slave owners in the 1860 slave census report in Callaway County, Missouri, in one township.